If you are just joining us for council time, it is Wednesday, February 23rd. We have just completed our work session on parks, and we will now meet in executive session, as was discussed previously, with legal counsel as allowed by RCW 42.30.110(1)(I) for pending litigation. And the council will be in executive session for 20 minutes, returning at, let's make it 10:50. And the council is not expected to take any action following executive session. We are adjourned to that executive session now. Not adjourned, but we'll see you on the other side.
Hello, the council has extended their executive session for 10 more minutes and will be coming back at 11:01. Thank you. Hello, the council has extended executive session for 5 more minutes and will be returning at 11:05.
We do have a quorum now, but we're still waiting for 2 counselors to join.
Ah,
But if you would like, Chair, you can certainly start.
no, let's wait just a moment. I had trouble getting back online as well.
I had to wait it to be let in.
We are now missing only Counselor Lentz, is that correct?
That is correct.
I thought I saw her, but I don't. Let's go ahead and get started at any rate, and we can do some of the initial things that will move us along as we need to. We are back in council time, Wednesday, February 23rd. We have completed the executive session, and I think we all apologize that it took as long as it did, but it just simply did this time. And we are prepared now to move on. So we begin with old business, and Kathleen Otto, I understand that you need to amend the agenda for moving item 2.3.
Yes, that's correct, Council. So this is regarding the March 15th council meeting. Currently is scheduled as an evening meeting. I did have a request from a counselor to see if the council would consider moving that to the morning at 10 a.m. meeting. And the reason why we need to move it up is that we actually have to let the Columbian know by noon today if the council's opening to changing the hearing from an evening to the daytime on March 15th.
And why was it requested to be moved up?
Yes, so it was Counselor Lentz, and I believe part of her role with CTRAN, she'll be out of town again at a training or a conference in Washington, D.C., and she would like to participate. With the time difference and the conference, the morning would help her be able to do both.
I see. Are there comments from council on that? And there is Counselor Lentz. We were discussing moving item 2.3 on the agenda up so that we could talk about March 15. So if you or others have comments on that, they're welcome now.
I have no concerns to move it if it would help have the whole council present.
Are there others who concur?
Yeah, I concur. Yeah.
Do we need to vote on this, Kathleen?
It would be good. Thank you.
Okay. May I have a motion?
Move to.
I'll make a motion to approve Councilor Lentz's moving the meeting to the morning on the 15th.
Second.
Is there further discussion? All those in favor of moving the item up on the agenda, please say aye.
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 Okay, that is done. And we now move to old business. Item 1.1 is minutes for February 16. Is there a motion for approval?
Move to
Motion
approve.
to approve, Madam Chair.
Second.
Second. Very good. Discussion? Changes, amendments? Okay, all those in favor of approving the minutes of February 16, say aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion passes. The item number 1.2, redistricting process, involves pending litigation, and there has been a complaint filed, which will involve a hearing on March 25 that has been requested. So we as council will revisit that item after that point in time. Is there anything that, Kathleen, that you wish to add? Okay, we move to item 1.3 with the ECHO Memorandum of Agreement. Lindsay.
Sure, I'm happy to introduce the topic. So Councilors Bowerman and Medvedji have been working with the city, some of our small city and our homeless stakeholders at a potential group entitled the Ending Community Homelessness Organization, or ECHO for short. This is similar to the Joint Executive Group on Homelessness, but kind of took some of the same people and merged it with discussions that we had related to the continuum of care and kind of what the players wanted at this point in time. And we have this memorandum of agreement and the charter put forth for this ECHO. So I spoke to Aaron, my counterpart at the city, and the city council. The Vancouver City Council is going to be taking this for approval to their meeting on Monday, February 28th. So the question before the council is, would you like to similarly schedule this for consideration during your Tuesday, March 1st meeting? I'm happy to answer any questions about the details, but I don't know if Councillor Bowerman or Councillor Medvedji would prefer to discuss the substance.
I just have a comment on this. At the last meeting of ECHO, we did vote on the idea that the document that we approved at that meeting would be taken to the various jurisdictions, the cities, plural, and the county. Subsequently, Lindsay, we got an email from you where the city suggested removing some language of the document. I have concerns with that since ECHO had already voted on what would be brought to this jurisdiction. Would you care to comment on that?
Sure. So definitely at the last meeting, the people that were in the room voted to approve this and bring it forward to, as you say, the respective jurisdictions for their consideration. Subsequent to that, the Vancouver City attorneys reviewed the document and they're requesting to remove some portion of section 11. And I don't know if you want to scroll down. It's not going to have the old language. But the old language in there regarding indemnification was, in my opinion, it was superfluous. It was repetitive from the first section. And so the first sentence saying that each party shall be responsible for their own acts and omissions and the acts and omissions of their agents and employees. The remainder of the language that had been in there was simply repeating and basically saying the same thing over, as us lawyers like to do sometimes. And so their lawyers preferred to take that out for clarity's sake. And so that's what will be going to their city council, is this version that you see in front of you.
So and that's the clarification I was seeking, Lindsay. They are not taking the version then that ECHO had voted on to go to the jurisdictions. They're changing it. Is that correct?
They're removing this language out of section 11. Yes.
Okay. I think that from my own perspective, before we would just go along with that, that I would like to hear from our legal counsel on the implications of that. Does all of this paragraph, for example, truly deal with indemnification, or are there other issues that they're maybe eliminating by virtue of just taking that out as well? So I'm not comfortable personally with voting on something other than what ECHO had recommended. But other comments are invited, certainly from Councilor Medvigi.
Yeah, I was just scrolling through to see if Leslie was still here. I see Christine Cook's on board, or there's Leslie. So I had no problem eliminating the indemnification language in paragraph 11. I always like it when a lawyer says, you know, this is legalese that's redundant and not necessary, to shorten the document and make it a little clearer. So I didn't have any problem agreeing to that. To what the city attorney identified as surplusage, really. But Leslie, is this something that you can readily identify? I didn't know if this was passed on to you prior to today. I mean, this has only been in the last few days we've been discussing this issue.
Sure. Thank you, Councilor Medvigi. I can respond to that. Essentially, what this one sentence is saying is that each party is responsible for their own acts and omissions. So I think the term indemnification is, at least just that word is misleading, because there is no indemnification language in this particular paragraph. And what it means is the reason why parties have indemnification, and it's usually used in a contract when there's a contract for services. And there's a potential lawsuit that arises out of the conduct of one party, but perhaps not another, then it requires that if that lawsuit happens and all parties are named, if the party who's named didn't have any negligent acts, but it's based on another party's negligent act, then it gives that, what we'll call innocent party, the ability to seek a defense and indemnification from the other party. And that means that the other party, if they accepted that, would then pay for the attorney's fees and the litigation, that sort of thing. So in this particular instance, that language is not there. It just says each party's responsible for their own acts and omissions. Because of the type of agreement this is, I don't see that that's an issue needing an indemnification, because I don't see that this is similar to a contract for services, which I would recommend having indemnification in that type of agreement, but it doesn't appear as though that's necessarily needed here. Does that answer your question?
Oh, sorry, Leslie. I think that that was the city's rationale as well, when the city attorney took a look at it, is especially given that the nature of the group is more of a think tank discussion, that having really detailed indemnifications wasn't necessarily appropriate to this type of entity anyway.
If there is no indemnification that is offered, what would be a proper heading for this paragraph, do you think?
Well, I think that the heading can remain, because the topic is indemnification. The topic is how it will handle in the event that there are actions or omissions by one of the parties, and how you would handle that. And so I think that the heading, Leslie's correct, certainly, that it doesn't describe the processes for how one party would indemnify the other. But what it does say is this is how we're going to handle the question of indemnification, which is to say each party is responsible for their own.
Thanks for that, Leslie. And Lindsay, I would like to see this move forward. If one of the other cities objects to removal of that language that had been previously voted on last meeting, then I guess we could revisit it. But I'm looking to continue moving this forward and streamlining it. I mean, we really have work to do, and one of the things we're still working on and hoping for from not only Vanessa and Michael, but the Council for the Homeless is an overarching standard operating procedure for how different entities, whether it's WASDOT or any of the ports or cities or counties is going to humanely and appropriately and programmatically bring services to encampments to remove those encampments. I mean, we have work to do, and I'd like to get through this process and get us working on substantive issues as quickly as possible. So I would like to see this move forward. If the city's happy with it, I think that was the big hurdle. If you want to call it a hurdle, I mean, there was a lot of collaboration that went into creating the document as you now see it.
What provision has been made for the other cities who are, in theory, considering this at the same time, but not the version that the city changed it to? What provision has been made for them to approve what would be a changed version from what came out of ECHO?
All of the small cities have received the updated drafts. So I've made sure that the representatives who were at the last JEG meeting have received it, or alternatively, the mayors of the cities that were not present at the last meeting. I also know that Mayor McInerney Ogle has reached out to the mayors directly to talk to them about this and any of the minor changes that have been made.
Are there additional minor changes?
No, there was a typo that was made, and then additionally updating the signature blocks. So, for example, now that you are the chair, the signature block for the city and county was changed.
We had discussed that, yeah.
Right.
So are we ready for a motion on this?
I'll make a motion to approve it and move it forward for ratification.
It being the revision as proposed by the city of Vancouver on section 11. Is that correct?
Correct. What's on the screen that we're looking at right now?
And what is the date shown in the upper right? I can't read that. So because there are so
February
many.
22nd.
2/22/22, huh? So that's the version. And is there a second?
I will second it.
Further discussion?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just briefly, and I probably made this comment before, and I agree with Councilor Medvey. I think these things are important to move forward. I like us to adopt resolutions on our Tuesday meetings if we can, because it gives us a better opportunity to communicate to the community what we're doing and have a broader discussion with maybe a little bit broader audience. But I certainly support the resolution or the MOA. But so that's my only comment. So.
Correct. Councilor Wilson, I think Councilor Medvedji's motion was to move it forward, which would be to place it on the Tuesday agenda.
Okay, well then I fully support that.
Thank you.
Second.
Madam
Further
Chair.
discussion?
Yeah, Madam Chair,
Yes, Councilor.
if I could ask, what is your comfort level at this point with this motion?
I have honestly mixed emotions. I would like very much to see the MOA move forward. No question about that. I do have the mixed emotions because of any single jurisdiction making changes unilaterally after it came out of ECHO with unanimous approval to go to the jurisdictions. So those are my conflicts that I am feeling, but I'll deal with that. And I'll deal with it favorably to vote for it when the time comes. Other discussion? Do you yourself have any comments on that, Councilor?
I actually want to follow your lead in this case because I have not been involved in this group, and I want to follow my chair.
Well, thank you. I do have concerns about any jurisdiction, including the county, making any unilateral changes in things that have come out of a meeting that is intended to go to the other jurisdictions. I don't find that, frankly, to be proper procedure. So that's my reservation. Without it going back through the process again, which, yes, it does take more time. Okay, so yes.
Can I just comment on that, Karen? Thank you, Madam Chair. Some of this is expeditiously, informally, but collaboratively done. So between the city attorney, Aaron, Lindsay, then getting the information to us over the last few days. That's a collaborative process, and getting the information additionally out to the other councils in the cities that had participated. So it's not really unilateral. It was maybe identified unilaterally by Vancouver City Attorney, but then disseminated and informally discussed individually until we got to this hearing, and then put it all out into the public domain so we could vote on it. So it may have started unilaterally, but I'm happy with the process and happy to move it along.
So if there's no further discussion, it has been moved and seconded that this item be on Tuesday's agenda for action at that time. Although, any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion is passed. And now we move to item 1.4, the vacant buildable lands model. And I believe our purpose here is to ensure that staff has clear direction on the next steps. So Kathleen?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And Council, as you know, last Tuesday, there was a lot of discussion on the vacant buildable land model report. Staff has already started to work on some items, but just want to make sure that they're supporting the council and going down the direction that you wish. And so I believe Oliver and Jose are on and are going to talk about what they've done so far and propose next steps for the council's consideration.
Yeah, thank you, Kathleen, and good morning, councillors. For the record, Oliver Ojako, Community Planning. As the county manager indicated, we have Jose online also to perhaps answer questions. So what I'm going to do quickly is just share with the council what we have done to date following the February 15th hearing. We started working with our GIS staff and prepared grant routing maps. And what does that mean? It's looking at areas that are designated for residential, commercial, and industrial land, and then running the VBLM to show parcels classified as vacant, underutilized, or built for the stakeholders to review, because I believe there was discussion about grant routing and we are ready to do so. So we have that map ready to go out today. What I will be asking the council is a hard deadline of perhaps 1 week, unless the council advises us differently. And 1 week from today will be March 2nd. So want the council to bear that in mind. The second thing we have done is a draft language in the executive session of the report, which we can share with the council, but because it is draft, we know that that will likely change based on the feedback from the grant routing work. The third thing we have done is just because there was some confusion about policy and data and so forth. So we also drafted a memo of the relationship between the comprehensive plan periodic update, the buildable lands report, and the housing option study and action plan that we are working on. Again, it's in draft form. We can provide that to the council. In terms of the next steps, that will really depend on the feedback we receive from the grant routine and for the stakeholders to review that and provide us feedback. The only thing I will say is that for the report itself, the look back of the level of building activity is done. So no further changes will be done as it relates to the level of building activity reported in the provided in the report. Further changes will be likely will be made to the executive section depending on the outcome of the feedback. And I also suspect that information provided to council staff as a result of that feedback could lead to the tweak to the model, which will require changes to the report in terms of capacity. In other words, capacity may go up, it may go down, depending on the feedback we received. And finally, with all this, it's likely that on March 1st, the council may decide to continue the hearing again, because if we were to give 1 week today for the stakeholders to provide us feedback on the grant routing map, we may not have sufficient time to make all these changes and schedule for a hearing. So that's really, in a nutshell, is what I wanted to share with the council.
Madam Chair, could I ask Oliver a quick question?
Let's real quick find out, is Jose going to continue or?
No, councilors, I'm done.
And Jose is not going to speak on this now.
Maybe if council has questions, I may turn to him to answer on myself.
Okay, great. Councilor Medvegi, please go ahead.
So do we already have a Zoom or actual meeting between responsible planning coalition staff and Vancouver planners and other stakeholders? Is there something already agreed upon?
Not yet. I've reached out to the cities of Vancouver in particular, but I haven't heard any date set yet. But that will be, in terms of next steps, that will be something we'll be pushing for.
So are the cities the only stakeholders that have been contacted to date?
Yes, I have contacted the city of Vancouver, and when we have a date, all the stakeholders interested in this report will be invited to that meeting. So I started with the city of Vancouver, but all the other stakeholders will be invited when we have a date for a meeting.
Madam Chair,
Yes. Councilor Brown.
I would like to ask that the discussion of this take place prior to March 2nd. The deadline be moved up from March 2nd. I think everybody that was involved in this is very aware of what's happening. They were on the hearing, they heard it. You've created a map, and frankly, I've been working on this for a year, maybe a year and a half already. And I would like to participate in this vote. So, and see what the result of all of this is. So I'm just going to ask that we be able to hear this on March 1st. If it requires, extending the hearing, I can understand that. However, if you place the deadline at a week, then we're, it doesn't accomplish what I've been working on for a year and a half, and that's pretty disappointing.
No, Councilor, I share your concern. That's why I was asking council, with your permission, I need a hard deadline. I can do 2 days. I can do 3 days from today. The reason we have been working with GIS staff is also to be able to provide a platform so that when we send this information out, people can be able to access it. That's why it's taken us this long to get here. But that information is ready to go out. What deadline did the council want me to give? 2 days, a day, for them to review the map and provide us feedback? I don't want to give them 2 days and people saying we don't have a sufficient time. That's why I'm asking for a hard deadline from or direction from the council.
Chair Barrowman, this is Kathleen.
Yes.
And just another, something else for your consideration, like Oliver said, that he can certainly take the direction on a shortened time frame, but the other, if there's going to be any change that is of any significance, please keep in mind that we need to make sure our community has plenty of time to review this as well prior to the public hearing so that they can provide a public testimony as well. Thank you.
I guess my concern and disappointment is that the only stakeholders that maybe have been contacted to this point are the cities. They are certainly critical to the process, but so are others. And in fact, I believe word was given to you perhaps that the Responsible Planning Coalition had invited the cities to the table so that they could have a discussion. And this was the day after our public hearing, not, a week later. And I don't know what came out of that, if anything, or if they're in further discussions now. But I think that stakeholder group needs to very quickly be a larger group than just the cities. And I'll give you an example of why. At the CREDC meeting for economic development this week or last week, there was mention made of 2 more businesses that wanted to locate this year in Clark County, but could not find employment lands. So they've already moved to an adjoining county. That kind of feedback that is an aspect of ground truthing really needs to be heard, but it's not going to come from the cities. It would come from other stakeholders. So I don't know what the quickest way is for you at this point to get the other stakeholders involved, but I think waiting on the city to set a date and then move forward after that isn't going as rapidly as it should.
So, and can I just segue off of that? And this really doesn't get to the overall timing issue and the issue that Eileen has raised, but I just naturally assumed that after our last meeting, because it was somewhat of a policy decision, that we were really going to insist upon the private sector being involved. Staff was only to be there to kind of provide the technical expertise to hear from the private sector, those that are actually engaged in this and have been for decades, together with CREDC and ICC, everyone that represents kind of the private sector knowledge base really is a critical component that we wanted included in addition to city staff or county staff. So I don't know how we get that together. I just assumed because one invited the other that was going to naturally occur immediately.
So if I can, and Oliver, correct me if I'm not speaking correctly. So I know GIS staff was updating the map so that there's the most accurate information as of today, so that the people who are going to be sent, which is the cities as well as the building industry. So both of those, all of the key stakeholders, as Oliver has said, will be sent the ground truthing map, and will be invited to have conversations. We need to get that map updated first to ensure that they had the most up-to-date information. I did share with Oliver, Chair Bowerman, the conversation that we had about the other external stakeholder reaching out to the City of Vancouver. It would have been great also if they reached out to county staff, even so that they could be there to listen to the conversation and be part of that. But it's my understanding that that never happened. So I know county staff is looking forward to having those conversations, and not to influence or try to influence anything, but really to hear and get clarification on the understanding of where they're coming from so that they can provide the best information to the council for your consideration.
just a couple of things there. One is that I did offer to be in touch with you and through you, Kathleen, to county staff, for county staff to participate. I did not hear back, and so I do not know where or why that stood as it did. But at any rate, the ground truthing that was to take place, frankly, the people of the Responsible Planning Coalition saw as quite a long-term process. It's not that they can take that map and tomorrow or today go out and check every acre that is shown as buildable. That's the kind of thing that happens over time, and that's why they had asked for those maps weeks and months ago, because then as they are out in the community checking a certain parcel for its buildability and they find that there is something else there or some issue, that then they could give that feedback. So I'm concerned when I hear that there is a reliance on that ground truthing to take place in a really short time, because I don't think that it can work that way from their perspective. It hasn't taken place for a very long time. And so there's a lot to catch up on. That's a problem.
Also, Chair Bauman.
Yes, Councilor
I would-
O'Brien.
Thank you, thank you. I just want to echo those comments. This Responsible Planning Coalition asked for maps, ground truthing maps, months ago. And we were told that, there was agreement with staff that ground truthing needed to take place. So now here we are, and we're going to have a week for people to look at ground truthing. This is a real disappointment. I am totally disappointed in this. This lack of action, actually, on the part of staff here, because I think that's what it is. We asked for it. You agreed that it was necessary. So I don't understand why it didn't happen earlier. That's all.
Councillors, this is Oliver. I don't think that Bob Poole is joining us here. I share your frustration, but I believe, Jose, please correct me if I'm wrong. I believe some information was provided to the Responsible Planning Coalition when Bob has that information out. Council will remember that there was a time we were doing what if, option A, option B, option C. So it wasn't really clear which map Bob sent out to them. Now, the council did not make a final decision or your motion until June 29th. So I'm not sure what map Bob sent out and what format that was sent out. I wish I would have invited him to be here. But following your motion on February 15, you wanted a grand truthing, and that's why I was saying that the grand truthing, whether it happens today or in the future, because one of the issues, if you recall, is that the report is flawed. Now, the report is flawed based on what we are estimating is available. The only way we can get to that is, okay, here is the map that is associated with this report. You take it out, whether you have the time or staff will look at it, all the cities and other stakeholders. It will also go to EDC because EDC, CREDC, their major focus is what is shovel ready. That is a little bit different from here is what is vacant. Here is based on what is designated as commercial or industrial properties. Here's what the model is saying is vacant and available. It may not be shovel ready because infrastructure is not there. That's a different conversation. But we want to make this available based on the decision that the council made on June 29. Jose, if you're here and can ascertain that there was a time that some map or some series of map was provided to the development community, if I may say so. If I'm not wrong, please correct me, but I think the issue of grant routing, staff have said we're ready to do that, but that's going to be based on the final directive from council, and that did not come until the 29th of June. I wish Bob would have provided us a cleaner map or better information and put it in a format that everyone will be able to access. I think that's what some of the issues. I don't know if Bob is listening in, but don't want to put any blame on him. But I know at one point a map was sent out to the development community.
Yeah, so I know that Bob sent out a series of charts and tables that the development community was interested in seeing how the calculation was processed, and they're familiar with the designations. I don't know that a map of the individual jurisdictions was sent out directly to them. It was updated in the last draft that has been posted for a while now. In the back of the report, it has those maps. He was working on an electronic version of those paper copies that were available, and that's what we are proposing to send out and get feedback on.
Thank you.
And to circle back to a comment that you had made, Oliver, about CREDC focusing on shovel ready. Yes, they would love to focus on shovel ready because, of course, that makes it much more attractive to prospective employers to come. However, they also keep track of lands that are probably developable within a 30-month period. And by the time it gets past that, and you add the length of permitting and all the other things involved in developing lands, it is of less interest to them. It is certainly correct, because there comes a point where an employer says, I'm going elsewhere, where the land is available and frankly, the county is friendly to wanting me to come. So when it gets past 30 months, true, they tend to not keep as much track in that particular organization of what's out there. But it isn't just what's shovel ready, although, wow, that would be terrific. What other comments are there from staff or council? So what are you looking for from us today?
I think, as I said, we recognize that you have a hearing coming up on March 1st. We would like to send this map out today. And as I said, a hard deadline, whether we provide them 2 days, 3 days, whatever that hard deadline is, that's what I would like direction from council on. I don't want to push it 1 week. It may not be sufficient time, but at least we have something for folks to react to look at, to verify. It's not only unique to the Responsible Planning Coalition. All our city partners will take a look at that. As I indicated earlier, that map will also go to CREDC. When I talk about stakeholders, it's not even only the cities. It's not CREDC. We will send it out to, we can put it on our own FTP site for anyone to take a look at. I think the goal there is to be able to determine that the information that we are providing is accurate. How can we know that? Because it is the basis of that map or information that we are showing how many vacant residential land is available for development. And those vacant, underutilized, and built are based on some values. So someone has to look at it, including the city of Vancouver that is saying the report is flawed. Well, let everyone look at this information and then be able to tell us if you will have time to go out and verify this map. You can send it back to us with some comment or whatever the case may be. that could lead us to, again, revising the report itself. As the county manager indicated, whether we get a feedback or not, it will probably take us some time to revise the report based on that feedback. Otherwise, the grant truthing will make will have less effect in how we further changes we make to the report. So what am I looking for? A hard deadline from council, 2 days, 3 days, whatever that is. I will send this out right away and put that hard deadline on it. And if the council would like to see the draft language in the executive session, which you ask us to update or revise those 2 last paragraphs. This was your memo. This was, excuse me, your motion. And then staff took the initiative on our own to provide a draft memo on the relationship between the comp plan, BL, the Buildable Lands Report, and the Housing Action Plan we are working on. We can provide that to you so you can read that while we wait for the feedback on the grant truthing.
Comments from council?
Madam Chair, I have a question about when the actual report is due to Commerce. What is that?
The actual report is due to Commerce June 30th, 2022. That's a hard deadline for our submittal.
Madam Chair, I guess my question would be then, giving a couple of days for people to actually look at a map and do ground truthing doesn't seem like a sufficient time. I'm wondering if there is something that could be dealt with at the March 1st hearing, but that would set aside, so to speak, to maybe a date certain or something about the results of what the stakeholders find with regard to this map. I don't know if that's a possibility, but it seems to me, you know, as has been stated in this session here already, this has been asked for some time, and we should have had several months to be looking at this because everybody agreed. I mean, staff and stakeholders agreed that groundproofing was a real necessary part of this. Is there a way that we can deal with this with passing a portion of it, but maybe changing some things prior to June 30th in order for the report to have the data based upon any data that has to do with groundproofing based upon what stakeholders have seen in that map?
Chair Bowerman, I'm not sure if this answers Councilor O'Brien's question, but I was just looking through my messages, and it looked like there was a map that was sent over to the council on October 15th, as well as the supporting spreadsheets with the specific data by city that fed into that. I believe that's probably what Oliver and GIS is currently updating. And so I don't know, you know, the review might take a little sooner, maybe not a couple days with the cities or the key business industry, because that data was already there and was shared a few months ago. I'm sorry.
Was that the map with no streets?
You know, honestly, that when I opened the link, it's not a working link right now, probably because they've updated it and pulled it off, but it does, like I said, I have all the spreadsheets that were sent as well from Jose and Oliver, and that had the actual numbers that supported that map that was sent. But unfortunately, I can't open the link right now.
I know there had been one that was sent without streets, making it kind of a guessing game whether they were able to identify the lands properly that were intended for identification. I don't know if that is the map that you're referring to now, but it might be. And that was a kind of taken as a step in the right direction, but not a usable one for ground truthing, if that is in fact the one.
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
Kathleen, what was the date on that? Did you say September 15th?
October 15th, I just re-forwarded the email to you.
Okay, thank you.
But that, again, that link is not working at the moment.
So Oliver had suggested a format for their going forward, which sounds fine. That was my understanding from the last meeting, what we were doing. And I think that would be excellent. Adding, as you said, the additional stakeholders beyond just the cities, so that there is good, well-rounded feedback coming to you as you have requested the need for. Is there anything else by way of feedback for Oliver and Jose?
So, Madam Chair,
Yes.
I want to steer away from criticism at all. I appreciate Oliver and Jose, what you're doing and where we're at. We obviously we are in that quality period where we really need to crunch to get it done and corrected and get the best input from all parties as we can in the remaining months. So, we need to give them a hard deadline. I think that would help. I understood that the map was ready to go out again today, the GIS map. So obviously that's one hard deadline. Let's make sure it gets out today to everybody, and post it wherever you need to post it as well. So we just need to bear down and do the best we can. But I just want to make sure we do bring in the expertise of our private sector stakeholders as soon as possible. Really, reach out to them to get the parties together so we can do this ground proofing that we talked about last time.
Are you envisioning a meeting of the group, which you had mentioned earlier in our discussion, Oliver?
Yes, as the county manager indicated, county staff is available. We are available to meet, listen in, and provide facts to the best that we can. I don't think that we are going in with changing the motion or advocating for anything. We just want to be able to attend any meeting. We are available to, and I've reached out to the cities. We are available to meet. And if the council directs me to call that meeting, I will call the meeting. But I want to hear from those that are objecting to the report, because objecting to the report technically is really objecting to the motions that the council have already made in terms of the assumptions and so forth. So that's not your staff position at this point, but I'm available to go meet. Secondly, I think the most important thing to us is that you cannot criticize a report that is flawed, but then you don't want to look at the map that supports that report. I want you to be able to look at that information and tell us what is wrong, because the fundamental issues folks are raising is that the report is flawed. For the cities, we are underestimating their capacity. I want them to be at the table and look at this information and tell us feedback. How are we underestimating your capacity? If, on the other hand, the issue is we want you, for example, the city of Vancouver, we want the council to consider pending development within our jurisdiction or development that is occurring in our commercial district. That's a different conversation that we can bring it back to the council that's what the city wants. So there are a couple of moving targets here that we are ready to engage the city of Vancouver, any other cities to really bring back some information to our council and other stakeholders.
With regard to the first point that you made, that you were available to go meet, that is appreciated, but I think that the expectation was that you would not be available, but you would be the organizer. And so, yes, for you to do that is I think a proper county role, since the report does come from the county. And my understanding was that the city and Responsible Planning Commission simply took the initiative to go ahead and meet with each other, however that went, I don't know, simply because they had not heard from the county. And so they were wanting to get those discussions going. But for you to step in and initiate discussion between the parties that you know need to be at that table would be definitely appreciated and needed.
Thank you. I will, and I think the question that Councillor O'Brien raised is, what will the council like to see? Because you still have a hearing that you continue to March 1st. So I don't want to be rehearsing this in front of the council at your March 1st hearing, but as I indicated, there are two other things that we have done. One is a new draft language in the executive session, but my caution there is that if you like to see that draft, we can provide it, but that's going to change eventually when the final report is done. If there are feedback coming from the grant routing. The second is we have this draft memo. You didn't ask for it, but I think it's key to further understanding of the relationship between the periodic review, the buildable lands report, and the affordable housing issues, which I believe that the housing option study and action plan will address somehow. So that draft memo is available. We can provide it to the council, but that is a separate thing that the council, the staff did prepare. The next steps, I really believe that that will all stem from what additional changes will be made to the report and the timing of when that will occur based on the feedback from the development community or from any other stakeholders.
Yes, that draft letter would be welcome. Thank you.
We will provide that to council, and also the draft language that is in the executive session right now is not final because that could change based on the feedback from the grant routing. And if I'm going to initiate a meeting, I will call a meeting as quickly as I can and see who all shows up. Because right now we can't meet in person, it's going to be through video.
Is that sufficient feedback at this point, Council? Is there anything else you wish to give to staff? Or further questions from staff?
Chair, I would just make sure Oliver has what he needs in terms of, I think he asked for a deadline. I don't remember if we gave him one or a timeline. So as long as he's got what he needs.
Do you?
Oh, myself, I haven't had the deadline. I think Councillor O'Brien was suggesting maybe we'll give them 1 week or something, and maybe that report that will come later after March 1st. So I haven't heard a hard deadline that you want me to include in the map that will go out today. Do you still want me to give them 1 week or 2? So I would like council directive on that.
I think ground truthing is an ongoing process, and it should continue in perpetuity. That's the way it was presented by the Responsible Planning Commission, because they find things on the ground as time goes along. So for this purposes of this report, I think it would be up to you to set the deadline by which you would like to have the feedback come in that is considered initial in nature that you need to have in order to include in your next draft. That would be my perspective, and somebody else is welcome to amend or change that. But I think there should be flexibility on our part as to what is the deadline that you set for a report that isn't due to Department of Commerce for what, 3 months?
Chair.
Yes, Councilor.
So Oliver, I mean, would a week or 2 weeks, if it was completely up to you, would a week be in your best interest to get this done? Or would 2 weeks be better?
I think a week will be sufficient. If they ask for more time, we can grant it, but I think a week will be sufficient. We'll see what feedback we get. And I agree that this will be ongoing, but ongoing in a sense that the VBLM is run every year when the assessors do their rollover. So when that is done, Bob always provide that to the jurisdiction, and anybody that wants to see it. That is the time that on an annual basis, this run is available on an annual basis. So we can provide. I agree that it should be continuously, but we have been doing that in the past. Every year we run the model based on the assessor's rollover of data. We provide that information out to the stakeholders that wants to see it, particularly the cities, because the goal there is for them to confirm that the information of how we classify land within their jurisdiction or within the UGA is appropriate. It is, and the development community as well. That information, Bob puts it out in the FTP styles that they provided. And then when we receive that feedback, that is when the official map is published. That's how we have been doing it in the past and will continue to do so. So it's an ongoing grant routine.
And for that ongoing process, the Responsible Planning Commission had suggested a process. And that was in a prior letter. I'd have to look it up. I don't remember if it was from June or October or exactly when, but that process being in place would allow for them to have a means for actually giving feedback to staff, so that it's like staff has additional arms and legs out there on the ground doing some of the work for the county and incorporating that work into your knowledge base that you can then use in your database. So whatever that process was, and again, I'd be happy to look it up if it isn't available to you at your fingertips, right? You know, in the near future. I think we really need that process or something similar for that ongoing communication that comes to you.
Chair Bowerman?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. That's exactly what I was thinking about. There was a suggestion that we have sort of an official way and fill out some kind of a report. And I don't remember what report be similar to, but there is something out there that is already exists that could be modeled after, so that when these engineers and developers, et cetera, find a parcel that they know and discover is not buildable, they can fill this out, send it into the county, so it becomes a part of the official action, to mark it on the map. So I would agree that, and from what I understood, Oliver, that you were very much for that. And so I think that we should try to progress with that as well, because as you say, it's an ongoing process. We do it every year and we look at it. But if there were an official way of actually noting that and having it go into the GIS map, that would be terrific. So, and I will just say, I'm going to allow the council and the staff to be able to, say what amount of time that you need to be able to complete this, and just defer to the rest of the council what you'd like. And, we will have what we have on March 1st and do with it what we can.
Mm-hmm.
Thank
Anything
you.
further?
Yeah,
Yes.
nothing. Thank you, councillors. Again, I will give a hard deadline of 1 week from today and see what we get back. If they ask for additional time, we will provide that. In terms of the ongoing process for grant routing, like I said, that is already in place. We do not ball pool, and council knows, and I've been saying this every minute I get, the model is not in community planning. The model resides with our GIS, and they run the model every year and provide that information to our cities and anyone that wants to see it. It is until we get feedback from the cities and any other group, here's what's wrong, here's what you need to add, here's not what you need to change. That feedback provides us the final say in publishing an official map of the vacant buildable lands model every year. So I can ask Bob to enhance that process so that everyone knows when they should be receiving that. So it's expectation that every year they will receive that and provide us feedback. But we don't publish any maps until we get feedback from the cities and any other stakeholders. So we will continue that process. But I will give 1 week from today, and then we'll see what happens. And in the interim, I will provide council with the draft new language, which I said will change in the executive summary section, and then the draft memo of the relationship between comp plan, periodic update, buildable lands report, and the housing action plan that is also talking about affordable housing and opportunities to deal with the crisis of affordability. So those are things that I will do in the interim. And I appreciate the council indulgement in this. We want to get it right. We want to make sure that every voices are heard because there's so many stakeholders out there. It's not only the city, it's not only the group that we are talking about. We will make this available to anyone that wants to take a look at it. You know, the buildable lands report is not about whether this property is going to be marketable or it's not going to be marketable. That's not what the buildable lands report is all about. You know, property owners or someone who's looking for a property is going to go out and do the feasibility study and whether it's going to pencil out, that's separate. That is not what the buildable lands report is all about. What it's about is based on the comprehensive plan designation of areas, plans for rooftop and for land for jobs. What are we saying based on the model and the assumptions that the council have given us? What are we saying is vacant, underutilized, or built? That's what the vacant build is. It's like an inventory. That's what it is. And people may disagree with that, but that's what the buildable lands report or the inventory or the model that we're using, that's what it's all about. It's just an inventory, and if we are wrong, let folks tell us that we are wrong. Then we might change the assumptions or the value that we assess to some of these properties, and that may change. But thank you, councillors. That's all I have.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Jose, for being here as well. I think that this enables us now to move to new business. So we look to item 2.1, proclamation request for Therapy Animal Day in April. Kathleen or Lindsay, whomever wishes to carry this.
Yeah, I believe that this was sent to all the council. It's a proclamation dedicating or proclaiming April 30th, 2022 as the Clark County Therapy Animal Day. And if the council is amendable, we'll put this on the appropriate hearing agenda.
Yes, yes. Are there 3 yeses? Okay, 3 yeses. And next is the Ethics Ordinance and Ethics Review and Oversight Office. We have received some materials on this attached to the agenda.
So Chair Bowerman and Council, I'll start this off and then hand this over to Lindsay. So this was part of our conversation last week regarding the Code of Ethics Ordinance and Ethics Review and Oversight Office that was just approved by the voters in November. So this is the draft, the first draft of the Code of Ethics Ordinance. I know that Lindsay and the council have been working on some proposed language for the rules of procedure historically because there was an ethics portion of that, but this is separate. I don't anticipate that you'll need it in your rules of procedure as this will be an ordinance. So based on the law and the provisions that have already been established, as well as prior conversations with the council, this is the first draft for your review. Hopefully you've had some time to review. I'll let Lindsay go over like a summary of what's all included, or if you need another week, I do have that tentatively scheduled for next week as well if needed for additional review. So Lindsay, can you please go over the criteria that you established in this ordinance?
Sure. So this was the based upon the discussions that we had, as Kathleen mentioned, during the rules of procedure discussions previously. So we can scroll down. The whereas, those are pretty standard, basically saying it's important to have ethics, and that the charter amendments were passed back in November. The Code of Ethical Conduct that's here, this describes kind of what the council had talked before about referencing RCW 4223. And giving some kind of description of what's contained within 4223, which is primarily the conflict of interest provision, and prohibiting elected officials and county employees from using their position for the basis of personal gain. So scrolling down, this language again is contained from the discussion that we had previously. Keeping in good faith, commitment to the spirit of open government, that elected officials and county employees would neither accept nor seek out favor from any source that could be used to influence their decision-making and their position, and that they would decline any gifts or anything that may give the appearance of impropriety and the appearance that somebody is trying to essentially buy their movement in a particular direction. And then states that elected officials and employees accused of violating this code of ethics would be subject to review by the Ethics Review Commission. So the reason for inclusion of both elected officials and county employees is that was what was contained in the charter. So I know previously when the council discussed this, it was specific to the county council, but per the charter amendment, it applies to all county elected officials, of course, including the county council and county employees and those that receive funding through the county budget. So the Ethics Review Commission that's proposed here is comprised of 3 members, one of which would be an attorney. That's following, I believe, Pierce County's model. This again was something that the council had discussed before, although there are many different forms that an ethics review commission can take. And there are many different examples within the state, and the charter amendment doesn't specify the composition specifically of the new ethics review commission that's to be created. Again, this language says that the commission will meet as frequently as deemed necessary. The members are not going to serve, they're not going to receive compensation for their service. So this would be similar to many of our advisory boards and commissions where their expenses are paid, but they don't receive compensation for their services. So we can scroll down just a little bit. You can see here, the proposal is that the commission will do the initial investigation. I should back up. The commissioners would be appointed and subject to confirmation by the council. So appointed by the county manager and then confirmed by the county council. The commission would investigate complaints that are made. Those complaints could come directly to the commission, but there's also, as required by the charter amendment, the ethics hotline. So those complaints can come in through that hotline. And then the commission will do the investigation to determine whether or not there's an ethical violation. This language in here does allow the commission to hire an outside third party to conduct that investigation if they determine that that would be necessary and appropriate. And then if there are violations made, this is where it deviated. The draft here deviates from the past discussion on the rules of procedure, because of course, now we're talking about all elected officials and county employees. So some things like removal from somebody's commissions, that doesn't really apply to county employees. So what's contained here is that the commission may take certain action, including a public admonishment, a resolution of censure, or anything allowed by public ethics policy or statutes. That if the member is if the violator is a member of the county council, that the county council can take those actions that you had discussed before, including that public censure, removal from committees which they're representing the county, or any other course of action allowed by law. And what I drafted in here is that if the violator is a county employee, that the county manager may take action pursuant to state law, county policy, or any applicable collective bargaining agreements. Of course, Kathleen's going to continue to be subject to those collective bargaining agreements if it applies to the county employee in question. And then below just contains the information per the charter about the Ethics Review and Oversight Office that the county manager will create. That office will provide the staffing, that there will be the hotline to receive complaints, and that the county manager will ensure available staff support for that committee. That gives Kathleen or any future county manager the ability to put staffing where it makes sense at the particular time. So it's not in one particular department or office, that it's up to the county manager to ensure that whatever staff is required is there. So I'm happy to answer any questions about this.
Are there questions from council? Yes, Councilor Medvici.
So two things came up when I quickly reread this for about the 10th time. So this process really depends entirely on the quality of the people that the county manager picks, and one of which may be a lawyer. But there's nothing in this about what the PA's role should be or could be, or whether they have no role at all in advising this committee. The other thing that was concerning to me was this notion that they can hire a third party to do the investigation. You know, is that in consultation with the manager? What's the budget for that? You know, the way it reads, they'll just go ahead and hire somebody and we'll foot the bill, not knowing if it's within our capacity or who they hire. So those are the two areas, legal advice and the hiring of an investigator or investigative body, which typically can be a law firm itself, which can be fairly expensive.
Sure. Yeah. And Kathleen, I don't know if you want to provide more information. I know you have more experience in terms of how these investigations and outside entities usually work. It's something that the county has historically done, and other jurisdictions do as well.
I would have to review the actual charter language on this, because I actually agree with Councilor Medvici's concern, because this is not a funded department. We will have paid staff who support them like we do with our other boards and commissions. They are volunteers. And so if the charter language states that they have the right to hire outside counsel, we would, okay, it doesn't. So I would opt to remove that, or ask to remove that from the code. That doesn't stop us. If there is a need for it, then the board or commission can come and request that information. Then because we want to make sure we have some oversight in the budget piece. But so it's not eliminating their ability to do that. But certainly I don't want to set up a tone that it's encouraged to do that, because that's the role of this commission, is to review and investigate ethics concerns that are brought forward.
Sure. Very good.
As far as the PA's office, I think a similar analysis can be done, in that the PA's office can provide. The question for the council, I don't know, the charter amendment doesn't require the prosecuting attorney's office to provide support for this ethics review commission. And so it's certainly something that they can do. I know they provide support for things, like the Parks Advisory Board and others.
Is there anything else in this document that is not required, that we have kind of gone above and beyond, like the phrase on the hiring of investigators? Anything else along that line?
No, not necessarily above and beyond, but for example, specifying the type of actions that can be taken if an ethics violation is found. That isn't specified within the charter amendment, so that's completely open. For example, obviously state law still applies. And so, to the extent that somebody violates state law, that's going to apply irregardless of whatever is done with this ethics review commission. But the council's free to make those as stringent or as narrow or as broad or as, less stringent as you would like. Similarly, the what's drafted here as far as the composition, that's wide open. There are a lot of different examples. Like I said, this one mirrors what Pierce County, I believe, is doing, but that certainly doesn't mean that there's really not a best practice of, it should be this many people comprised of this type of individuals. So that's where, again, it's the charter amendment is very open-ended on that question. So
And
you can leave it as
go
broad.
ahead, whoever that was.
Yeah, sorry, Chair Bowerman. So just to elaborate on what Lindsay said, so the charter does not say that a member needs to be an attorney. Of course, there's nothing against that. That might be a good path forward, but there is nothing. So that is above and beyond what the charter states.
And where would we find the sections on composition that are alluded to here that are not requirements, and the consequences section?
And are you talking about in the charter itself?
No, in this document before us, where is the part that isn't required?
It's kind of throughout the entire thing. So, for example, basically the section 0.03, the Oversight Office, that's pretty much contained within the charter amendment in terms of requiring staff to be provided, requiring a hotline to be created, and requiring the creation of an ethics oversight office. The remainder of it in 0.02, which is the violations and the investigation portion of it, and then 0.01, which is the actual ethical standards that the ethical standards, that is elaborating on state law. There are certain things in here in terms of, county elected officials and county employees are, vigorously dedicated to democratic ideals. That isn't clearly specified within the charter. So I don't know that I would say it's above and beyond. I would hope certainly that all of our county employees are dedicated to honesty, openness, and accountability. But there's those sorts of things that could be superfluous and not required within the ordinance.
Mm-hmm. I don't know about other counselors, but I would like the opportunity to reread this with that in mind. And I hadn't read it with that particular lens, and I'd like to do that now by having the charter in front of me along with this and make the comparison.
And just to also, and I know Lindsay said this when she was doing the overview, and it was a question that was brought up last week from Councilor Olson regarding the appointments. So there, we did get the clarification that I would actually be doing the interviews and the appointments, and the council would be confirming them during a council meeting. So if there's questions on that, it would be during the council meeting, but the council would not be part of the interview process.
Other thoughts to share at this point?
Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you. I'd certainly like another week or so to take a look at this in more detail and have the charter language in front. I just want to make sure that whatever we adopt in an ordinance is something that is manageable and enforceable and has meaning. And I do think we still get some confusion between conduct and ethics. And I think there's a difference there between political behavior, which we may or may not like, and ethical conduct and ethical behavior. So I want to make sure we're really clear on that as we adopt an ordinance and go forward with this committee.
Very good. So given this request, how would you see us proceeding at this point as far as the calendar?
We would bring it back next week, and I already had that on the proposed schedule that we discussed last week. In the event that you need a second week, that we'll put on council time for next week for discussion.
Very good.
Thank you.
Chair,
Thank you.
I have
Yes.
a couple of questions.
Yes, Councilor Lenz.
also related to what is and is not in the charter. Lindsay, you'd said that a lot of this language and some of the structure, I believe, came from Pierce County. Do they have this articulated so specifically in their county code?
They do. It's quite lengthy.
Okay.
So this is actually an abbreviated, truncated version of what they have. But like I said,
Okay.
theirs is lengthier probably than most jurisdictions. So there's not really a standard best practice on it, but yes.
And in your research, did you see that the majority of other counties with such an ordinance have such a detailed, such a level of detail in the county code specifically as far as makeup and structure and how it all works?
Most are similar to this, what you're seeing here in terms of having detail about the composition, detail in terms of the types of people that are on it, how long they serve without compensation, detail as far as the ethical parameters. It's unusual to see county employees included in that, but that's required by our charter now. So this is fairly typical in terms of length and detail for what other jurisdictions have.
Okay, I appreciate that. I want to be sure that we have very clear law language and policy language around this, and also just want to make sure that everything is in the right space that it should exist in. That sometimes we can get into trouble if the county code is too prescriptive and not actionable. And so I think that this does bear a closer read on the part of the entire council, and just wanted to make sure that we're looking at the right things in the right place. Another question that I have related to what is called for in the charter, looking at the language that was passed in the 8.12 section, it says that this ethics code must be adhered to by all departments and entities that receive funding through the county budget. And I think it is possible to interpret that as contractors as well as employees. And I'd like to get a sense from legal to make sure that we do create a code and language that does actually follow the language of the charter, if we need to also include other than elected officials and employees in this.
Yeah, I had that question too in drafting. Certainly also there are entities that receive funding as a pass-through. I mean, we receive federal funding that we pass through to entities that have their own, they're their own employers. And so that question, that's the reason that they're not included in this ordinance language, because I similarly had questions about being able to stretch that.
Yeah, I'd appreciate getting some advice on what we actually can include, what rights do we how far can this go, and what, based on this language, should it include, and make sure that we also don't have conflict there between what we can do and what we're being told to do.
Councilor Lentz, this is Leslie. I can take a look at that question and provide that information. And then in response to, I think it was Councilor Medvedji's question in terms of whether the PA's office would provide legal support, I can look into that question as well.
Thank you.
We can also resend this out to council with the charter language, with the RCW, with Pierce County, and then maybe Lindsay, another county that's been reduced like this one has, so that you have that information. And we do have, just as a note on our HR policy, that's also inclusive of those who work with the county on some of those, so that, there might be some, as Leslie's looking into that, just we do have other policies that extend to folks who work with us as well.
Okay, I think we have covered that. And is there anything further that you need going forward, Lindsay or Kathleen? Okay, very good. Thank you. So now we move to councilor reports. Are there any?
I'm hungry.
Yes.
I'm hungry too, but can I just make a mention of, we had some separate meetings about Lake Vancouver. We're still waiting on, there's been some curveballs up in the legislature, so they've been working on, especially the gas tax of Oregon. So Annette Cleveland was going to, as I understand it, amend the proviso so that we would only be looking at spending an initial 30,000 of the 150,000 for a planning document. Basically, here are the stakeholders, here are the strategic issues, here's what we need to go forward. And then the remainder of the 150,000 would need to be paid or spent prior to June of 2023. I understand that we're looking at an RFP to accomplish that. We have from WSU to a few on the short list vendors that may be prepared to respond to an immediate RFP. So all that's in motion. And I think we'll be hearing more very soon from whether or not Annette Cleveland was successful. I also met with Sharon Wiley on this as well, and she's very engaged on the topic. Kathleen, did you have any update to that report?
No, I don't. I think you covered everything well, and hopefully we'll have something on the street beginning of next week.
I will say on the budget note, there was the amendment that was included within the Senate budget as it came out of the committee to include that budget amendment. So it's moving in the Senate as well.
Any other councilor reports? Okay, moving to work session requests in that event. 4.1 is Neighborhood Traffic Management Program Development. Kathleen?
So council, this is from Public Works, both Matt Herman and Rob Klug. They are looking at creating a neighborhood traffic management program, develop a neighborhood traffic management program. And this is really to address neighborhood traffic concerns in a more concise and intentional way. So they would like to actually present their ideas to the council and obtain feedback. So they are looking for a work session at the end of March to do that.
Are we talking about turning in speedsters, or are we talking about physical facilities that need to be improved for traffic flow?
I think it's regarding, like, if people are speeding through, what's the process? So if a community has an issue with traffic in their neighborhood, whether it's people speeding or the flow or the number of cars or whatever, sight distance issues, I believe this would incorporate all of that. So any concerns that come forward.
Sounds good to everybody for a session. Very good. And the 2022 Amended Annual Construction Program.
Yes, so this is also a request from Public Works. This is to discuss the 2022 Amended Annual Construction Program. And you can see on here the topics. They've got a couple updates that they need to do, a Scrivener's error, including some of the funding that they've received for some projects. So they're asking for about 30 minutes on March 22nd, just as a reminder, and they'll go over all the amendments during that work session. And then following that work session, it'll go to a public hearing shortly thereafter. And these amendments do require a unanimous vote of the council who is present at the public hearing. So this is really the opportunity for staff to provide the updates and to get council feedback, answer any questions prior to scheduling the public hearing.
Questions for Kathleen? Are you thumbs up on having this one as a work session? I see 1,
Yes.
2, 3. Okay, you got it.
Thank you.
Lindsay, report on policy issues or updates.
Nothing else from me. Thank you.
Okay. We are now going to meet in an executive session with legal counsel as allowed by RCW 42.30.110, 1I for pending litigation. And the council will be in executive session for 15 minutes, returning at 1 o'clock. The council is not expected to take any action following the executive session. When council reconvenes, Councilor Medvigi, you will be present, yes? I would ask that you close out the executive session, please, because I do have an interview for someone's replacement going on at that exact moment. So I want to be sure that I'm on time for that. So if you would close out council time when that time comes, I'd be appreciative.
Chair Bowerman, I have an appointment too that I am going to have to rush to after this executive session. So I'm hoping that it will not extend longer than 15 minutes, maybe less. So
Ditto. Okay, very good.
if I don't show up, that's where I am.
Okay. We are now ready to move to executive session. So council time is going to reconvene in 15 minutes. Thank you.
Hello, the council has extended executive session for 5 more minutes and will be returning at 1:05.